What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Shot Quality Bets podcast. I am your host, and welcome to the Sun Belt and Atlantic Sun Conference Tournament preview episode. I am here with Big 3 for 3, my co-host today. We're going to be running through what you need to know about these two conferences from Shot Quality's perspective so that you can make smarter bets on these elimination games as we enter into March. I mean, Big 3, it is March 1st. We are recording this in the afternoon of Wednesday, March 1st. I can't believe we're here. What have you been looking forward to in some of these conference tournaments?
Yeah, this is a fun time of year. Right now we're at the conference tournaments where they kind of get like, I don't know, a day or two in between the games. It doesn't feel as much like March as when we get to the ACC and those ones where they just play back to back to back every day. But yeah, it's exciting to start seeing some auto bids here and see how some of these mid-major conferences pan out. But yeah, the Sun Belt's a fun one to start on for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to just dive right in. We're going to have a few plays. We're going to go through all of the projections that Shot Quality has for each of these games. Of course, if you're watching right now with us on Twitter or on YouTube, you can see it on the screen, what we're browsing. But if you're listening with us on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you catch us, you can, of course, just tune in and we'll walk you through what we're seeing and why we're going to be taking one team over another. I'm interested to see how Big 3 and I maybe differ on a couple of our takes here, but let's get right down to business. We're going to start out actually with the Atlantic Sun. 2 games coming up on Thursday. We're going to go with Liberty and Eastern Kentucky. Big 3, this one, I mean, there's a big spread here, right? Expected to be about a 13-point differential between these teams. Shot Quality projecting 81.1 to 66. What do you make of this play? I mean, it's not really a spread play, but are you thinking Liberty has what it takes to cover this type of number in the second round of the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Liberty, and we have talked about this a little bit before, definitely their conference to lose, and I think like you see last night, they beat Bellarmine by 20. Only a Shot Quality expected win by 10, and they were only expected to score 60 points in that game. I think especially a team like Liberty where, like we talked about, it's theirs to lose. It's kind of like you just have to win the game type of thing, and I think like you when you're the better team, you just like tend to be a little more careful in these types of situations when it's like win the conference tournament or bust, right? And this is definitely a game that they should win. They beat them by 10 at home a couple weeks ago, and they actually lost to them on the road in a game that Shot Quality projected them to win by 10. So I think 10 is probably a pretty fair number here. I don't think there's no reason to really expect a blowout, and I think Eastern Kentucky obviously knows that they can beat Liberty. And I think from the Liberty front, having already lost on the road at Eastern Kentucky, it's just a game where you have to go in and take care of business. So obviously Shot Quality has it pretty close to spot on what the spread is actually projected as, which is minus 13. I think in my head, at least, I'm probably leaning Eastern Kentucky here, but not sure I'd play either side.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I have some of the team stats up right now. It looks like Eastern Kentucky really has a better chance in terms of getting points rather than stopping Liberty. They're the 280th ranked defense on Shot Quality, 114th offense. A little bit of a difference, right? So some notable regression in this matchup is really just EKU expected to have more points on both sides of the court. So their offensive expectancies are all green, expecting more finishing at the rim efficiency, 3-point mid-range. But then also on the defensive side, expecting opponents to be shooting better against them at the rim and in the mid-range, 6% and 7% there respectively. So that's pretty serious in terms of regression stats. Are you thinking that this could be a spot where the points kind of just pour in Big Three?
Yeah, I mean, the shot quality bets model likes the over here. And this is something where we've talked a lot about. Our model has been shading heavily to the under just because of this like crazy market adjustment to overs. And to see an over, I mean, the model performs really, really well when there's an over because there's just like this extreme edge right now. And yeah, we have this one going over by 7 points. And I agree with Justin. You see why we have it going over. And it's that Eastern Kentucky, both defensively and offensively, shot quality has them giving up and scoring way more points per possession than they currently are. So that makes sense for sure on that front. And I think like that's why you're seeing that value in the model there.
I love it. I love it. I'm definitely on this one. So if you're looking for a pick right as we get started here, we're looking at the over in the Liberty and Eastern Kentucky game. But let's slow it down. Hopefully not like how Eastern Kentucky and Liberty would be playing, but we should slow it down and just talk a little bit about the ASUN tournament as a whole. I think that there's honestly, it's a pretty interesting look. I mean, I don't know if there's really a lot of market on the winner in terms of what you're trying to play, but how are you feeling about this tournament? I guess we've seen a round already, but what's your feel? What's your vibe for the ASUN?
Yeah, I think it's not an uncommon opinion, but I think, like we said, it is Liberty's to lose. Honestly, you can still get Liberty at like minus 220 on a lot of sites, which, assuming they win this game handily, I mean, you got to think that they're going to be higher than minus 220 in a money line matchup against Kennesaw State. And so I think that's something where it's like, man, if you like Liberty and you want them, not that I really would suggest playing at minus 220, but yeah, I think that's where the value is, honestly. There's no way I'd take Kennesaw at plus 220 just because I think if you like the Kennesaw side, just take parlay, like open parlay the money line today and the money line against Liberty, and you'll get a better number than that. So I think that that's one of the things where in the current futures market, I don't really see the value there. Kennesaw was, what was the line? I'm trying to figure out what they were lined. I think they were like +6 at home, maybe, or something like that. And so probably it will be like +9, +8 against Liberty in the championship game, which correlates with much higher than a minus 220. So I would say if you like Kennesaw or you think that they give Liberty a run and you want like a future on them, just like parlay the money lines or just wait and take Liberty, the money line against Liberty in the championship game.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, there's only the 4 teams remaining right now in terms of what's going on with this conference tournament. So all eyes are really on this. I feel like the next game, the Lipscomb Kennesaw game, because look, Kennesaw didn't exactly blow by Queens, right? Like that was a pretty contested matchup. And Lipscomb had an easier time with Stetson than I think people maybe thought. So there's going to be a lot of people looking into this game. It feels like the Liberty one is a foregone conclusion. Maybe you always want to look out for potentially betting on a game that feels that way. Just something to say. But this Lipscomb Kennesaw game looks pretty intriguing. I'm going to pull up what the model is telling us right here. So I need to just re-enter this.
Yeah, that Queens game was another one that the shot quality bets model was all over, right? We have Kennesaw and Queens rated very similarly, about like 170th and 180th in the country. A lot of other models had them like 140 and 200. So yeah, we basically had that game at a pick'em on a neutral site, and as you saw, 1 point game was essentially a pick'em. We also had the under. We're all over that. So yeah, I think the model's been performing pretty well on these teams from these conferences, and so that's why when you see something like the Liberty Eastern Kentucky over, and we're close to a play on the Kennesaw State over as well, that's something that has a lot of weight, I think, when you see like historically how the model's been performing on these conferences or these teams in this conference.
Yeah, for sure. And so the Kennesaw Lipscomb line looks like it's coming out at like 4.5 right now. I think it's out at both Five Dimes and Bovada, if I'm not mistaken, currently. Yeah, 4.5 at no, Five Dimes and Bet Online are carrying the line. It's 3:45 on Wednesday afternoon as we prepare for this Thursday slate in the Atlantic Sun. But I don't know, Big Three. This is a pretty intriguing one here for me. I don't know if you have any distinct feelings on either one of these teams. ShotQuality is projecting Lipscomb to win by 2.3. We have it 73.8 points for Kennesaw, 76.1 points for Lipscomb. That puts the total at 149.9. Consensus on the total is 145.5. So another Atlantic Sun over for the ShotQuality model. Any thoughts?
Weird thing here. Yeah, the Kennesaw Lipscomb. So they played the last time they played, the total was 144.5. And so game went over by 12. ShotQuality had it over by like 6 or 7. And now you see like 145.5. Bet online right now is 146. So a bit of adjustment to the over, which is also the side that ShotQuality likes in this one. I think that, I don't know, if I had to make a play in this game, it probably wouldn't be sidewise. It'd probably be on the over. But yeah, side, I think if this gets out to like a 5 or 6 for Kennesaw, like I said, ShotQuality doesn't like Kennesaw State as much as the box score analytics sites.
Right.
We're a little lower on them. So I think if you were to pick a side, it would be to fade Kennesaw for sure. So I think if you could get like a +5 or a +6, that would probably be my side of choice here on Lipscomb. But I'm not really sure the line moves out that way. I would guess it probably stays somewhere in this 4.5 range.
I agree. I think you'll see not too much movement on this one. Maybe a bit. I wouldn't be shocked to see it finish at 5.5. Honestly, but it's an interesting game. I mean, I'm pulling up some of what we're seeing here right now for these teams. Let me just pull up our matchup breakdown, which you can find for premium users at shotqualitybets.com. These have all of the team stats from each team lined up, color-coded nicely so that you can see all of the different types of stats and expected stats that you need. So what we're seeing here, a little bit diving into what Kennesaw is probably going to be looking to do. What I do is I kind of scroll through these frequencies to see how the teams do, both in terms of like the actual number, but also the frequency relative to the league down below. So this team, a pretty, I guess, normal distribution for Kennesaw, not anything crazy. They're not like running out. They have a pretty good open 3 rate. Rim and 3 rate's pretty average. Spacing's pretty average. Shot selections in the 80th percentile, though, on offense. They get to the line at the 54th highest rate. That's something you always want to see. And Lipscomb actually limits opponents to the 10th best free throw rate against. So that's pretty interesting to see. They only allow opponents to the line at 22.9% of the time. I don't know. Anything jumping out to you, Big Three? I think there's going to be some very interesting like free throw related. I mean, it's just such a big part of games when you get down to it at the end of like a single elimination game. You want the team that can kind of hit their free throws and knows how to get to the line, especially. I don't know. Any thoughts on how that might impact this one?
One of the things that's interesting here is looking at like Kennesaw State's against the spread record and also what ShotQuality has the against the spread record at, which is pretty impressive, right? This is a team that started most places ranked like 220th or higher at the start of the season, and now has crawled their way down to like 130, right? And I said even at ShotQuality, I think we only have them like 170 right now, but I guess it says down there 166. But it's still like, okay, they've performed really well against the spread this year, and they performed really well against the spread at ShotQuality too, right? But we still only have them at 166 in the country, which I think is just like a testament to like how low they began the season. And I think a lot of people get on this wave of, like this team's really, really good against the spread without understanding that every time you smash the spread in a game, like the market's adjusting, right? And so like as we stand, a current team's against the spread record like really shouldn't hold any weight because it should be 100% built into the line in the market. The biggest discrepancy that we have with this Kennesaw State team is like defensively. A lot of other analytics sites have their their defense rated, 100 to 125. We have them 150 something. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with, you look at their like defensive breakdown there on the shot type analysis, Justin, and you see that in transition, they are the 54th best defensive team in the country, only allowing 1.23 points per possession, which in transition is good, but that's the transition defense is very infrequent, right? Like that's only accounting for 8% of the possessions. And so you look at the other 91% of the defensive possessions and they're allowing 0.99 points per possession, which is 218th, And so I think like that's the thing is that I don't know, like having great transition defense, awesome. You see the big green number, but it really should hold so much less weight. And it does, at least on shot quality, hold so
I
much less.
think Yeah, I think you really got to kind of dig into the matchup there, right? Like if you have if you're looking at the Kennesaw defense for transition, you also need to take a look at Lipscomb and their offensive frequency in transition, which is pretty average, right? So they're not like charging at you like crazy. They're not leading the conference by any means. I just pulled up the conference filter on the team page for Lipscomb, and they're 8th in the conference in terms, or 7th in frequency. So it's not like they're running at this crazy rate. What's really interesting to me, though, Big Three, is that both these teams have pretty bad record looks, right? Both these teams' shot quality is expecting to be worse than they are in terms of the games they've won.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one. Like I said, I think a lot of the value here can be found in the over.
I agree. I think it's probably because this game, honestly, it feels like it's a little bit up for grabs. So I would probably lean towards the points. I'm not sure if the efficiency models, when you see like 12.4% difference between the win percent and shot quality expected win percentage, like these teams have been creating shots like 13, like a 13 and 16 and a 17 and 12 team instead of, the 17 and 12 and 21 and 8 team that they're currently being, essentially evaluated against in their efficiency. And I mean, look, we talk a lot about the difference between expected data and, efficiency-based metrics. And there's just going to be a good amount of games here that the things just didn't really line up for Kennesaw or Lipscomb maybe earlier in the season, and they still won games, or they won games by a lot more than they should have. It's an interesting balance, but what you need to sort of, I guess, look into when you get into like a single elimination scenario like this is that there's probably going to be a lot of back and forth. There could be, it might not be enough time to decide this one. Like this, I don't think Kennesaw is sitting there after the Queens game like this team that can't be beat, even though they are the 1 seed in this tournament, right? Lipscomb definitely has a good shot. I'm probably personally leaning towards the points if you can't hear it and how I'm talking about them. But yeah, the over definitely is going to be the shot quality play. So over in both games is what the model has, and our official plays for the podcast as well. Both Big Three and I like it. Of course, if you want to go and see every play that the Shot Quality Bets model has, you can go to shotqualitybets.com/line value to sign up and check it out. We have a free 2-day trial, so you can just go put your email in and get a quick peek at what we're talking about on the value finder. It is still the regular season for a bunch of teams, so there's plenty to be betting on. You can even go check out Big Three's card on his Twitter. I know we posted that right before we came on. Give the people something for tonight if they're listening, Big Three.
Yeah. Let's see. What's my biggest one tonight is Missouri on the road at LSU. I think LSU is just down and out. It's not really a very competitive team right now. They've really struggled. And it was a team that at the start of the year, I think a lot of people thought were going to be a little more competent than they have been. A ton of losses. A few of them were shot quality wins. But basically just have gotten beat up in the SEC. And I think at this point, Missouri playing for seeding and a lot more than LSU is. So that's my favorite play for tonight.
Love it. Boom. There's another one. So if you're hanging with us today, listening live on YouTube or on Twitter, fading LSU, not really the worst idea. They definitely have been lackluster. And I got to commend you for the courage, Big Three. Of course, LSU has been playing decently at home this season, but given where they're at, what the SEC picture kind of looks like, they're kind of done. So we're done with them too.
Let's Model has it at 7.4 too. So if you need any extra encouragement,
there we go.
Not just in my brain, ShotQuality and the numbers like it as well. So
that's what we want to hear, Big Three. A little bit of both. And look, that's the best way to do it, right? I mean, you can obviously sit here and take every play from the ShotQuality bets model. You'd be up over 100 units this season. But I personally like to do my best to combine the data with what I see and what I guess feel. Maybe I shouldn't do that as much. But anyway, let's move on to the Sun Belt. Let's talk a little bit about this conference. Honestly, a step up, a little bit of fresh air in terms of the quality, the average quality of the teams that we're seeing in this conference. This is definitely on the top half of the college basketball universe. Seeing some pretty contested games here. All the scores are on the screen. We'll start at the top. We have a 12:30 p.m. game, so getting a little bit of a treat, getting a little bit of midday basketball to start the day off right. South Alabama is going to be playing Appalachian State. ShotQuality projecting this as a 65 to 63.8 win for South Alabama. Makes it a play for South Alabama, as it looks like Appalachian State is favored, but I need to make sure.
Yeah, I think these are a couple of these neutral site games are being worked on still. I think a lot of them are reading in backwards.
I might be
South
backwards,
Alabama
right?
is 3.5 point favorites here. So
that's good. That makes a little bit. I was going to say, I really like the way ShotQuality is thinking here, but obviously it's a little bit too good to be true.
Same with Troy. Troy is -8 in this game, so there's no play there. Georgia Southern, I think, is -4.5. So I think honestly, we have all of these games inside of the numbers. So no real plays on it, but I definitely do have a lot of thoughts about this conference.
Let's hear them.
Okay, yeah, I'll just ramble then.
The
biggest thing with the Sun Belt is I just Googled Sun Belt Conference odds essentially, just because I was curious.
That's how to do it.
And the first thing that I saw was about the handle and the number of tickets on South Alabama, and it was insane. I think it's 40% of the handle or 45% of the tickets, something like that. At least at one of these books was on South Alabama, and I think that they are a super, super popular bet here, and it's kind of not like the ACC tournament. I think I referenced that just because it's a more popular tournament format that people are familiar with. But in order for South Alabama to win this tournament, they're going to have to play an extra game, right? And I think that that's one thing that a lot of people don't really take into account. South Alabama, in order to win this conference tournament, I think they're going to have to win 4 games. And it would be App State and then probably a Southern Mississippi, JMU, and then Louisiana. And it's just okay, you're telling me that you're only giving me +850, which I think is what it's at a lot of books, on them to win 4 games, 3 of which they're probably underdogs in. It's just we know how hard it is to win 4 games. And thankfully, it's not like the ACC where it's 4 games in 4 days. But to win this string of 4 games, and we see even this 8-9 matchup, they're only -3.5, right? And so I think it's just it's such a stretch. And I just threw it into an open parlay calculator just to see. And if you were to assume Ken Palm lines are kind of what you're going to get on these, you would get +1,600 on South Alabama, even better, +1,650. So why would you play 8.5 to 1 instead of, or why would you pay for South Alabama pre-tournament?
Oh yeah, no, that's bad.
Instead of +1,650. I think that's one thing. People love hitting these huge, I mean, not that +850 is a huge
it's a pretty solid return.
But yeah, it's not bad, but there's so many better ways to play this. And honestly, I'm not even a huge fan of the open parlay thing. I think just if you like South Alabama in this tournament, just play them game by game, right? And I think what you do is you also get away from the danger of someone important gets hurt in the first game, right? And you're just stuck with this ticket that's basically worthless, And I think that's the thing is, after they beat App State, who are they going to be favored against? They won't be favored against Southern Miss, especially with Southern Miss having time off. Right. They're not going to be favored against James Madison. Maybe if Troy wins, they'd be a slight -110 favorite. And then Marshall and Louisiana both favored over them. So I don't really understand the +850 here. And I think what it does is it opens the door for value on some of the other teams just because like the hold is kind of like over adjusted. Now, Southern Mississippi is +450 here, which is a pretty good value, I think, considering the
Yeah.
fact that they're probably favored over South Alabama. They're probably at worst pick 'em against James Madison or favored over Troy. And then they are probably a pick 'em against anyone in the championship game. So I think, like, honestly, if you were to go away or you're trying to see like where is the value, all of the South Alabama handle and tickets have extracted some value here and actually bumped up the literal number one seed in the conferences. Number to +450, which is kind of wild. So that's the route I would go if I were to like actually take a future here. But I think, Southern Miss and Louisiana, which I get it, no fun, 1 and 2 seed. I think Texas State is pretty live here too. I will say, talking about shot quality actually has Texas State ranked higher than it has South Alabama ranked. So Texas
Well, I
State
wanted to talk about I really wanted to talk about these rankings for shot quality. I brought them up here on one of these tabs. Here they are. So the top team in shot quality this season has been James Madison from this conference. So Southern Miss right there behind them a little bit with Louisiana and Marshall and even Troy. And then there's a little bit of a dip. Old Dominion's probably a little bit in the pack, but like James Madison, it really is James Madison, Southern Miss, and Louisiana. So honestly, my feeling seeing some of these shot quality numbers, another thing I'm noticing though is that Southern Miss, Louisiana, and Marshall, like these guys are getting wins from teams that are actually probably getting good looks against them, but just not hitting their shots, right? Like look at this -20 record luck, -14, -14, and that's just a quick subtraction of the win percentage and the shot quality win percentage. And you want, you'd like your shot quality win percentage to be as high as you can because it means you're manufacturing reliable offense. Or limiting opponents from developing reliable offense. Both work in this game that we play. James Madison, that really high rim and three rate. I think that again, there's a lot of contenders on that side of the bracket, in my opinion. And I can pull up the bracket again, but you have Marshall and Louisiana on one side, James Madison, Southern Miss on the other side. This is a really tough one for me to say, go and take a future on anything. I think you want to just play the matchups, try to figure out who's going to win. You're going to get tight lines, right? You're not going to get massive spreads. So, you can actually find decent positions. I think Marshall is honestly one of my favorites to do it. But so is Louisiana. That winner 9, winner 10 game here is going to be a really, really nice contest because you're either going to have something crazy happening with the 11, 14, and the 6, or you're going to have Marshall, Louisiana.
And I think one thing too here is you look at a South Alabama, right? A lot of these teams on the box score analytics sites, I've been calling them, but your Ken Palms and stuff, there's a huge chunk of these teams ranked right around 100. Marshall, Louisiana, James Madison, Southern Miss, and South Alabama, I think are all right there. And it's funny because we have South Alabama, 180. And I was looking into why that might be. And defensively in conference, South Alabama is allowing teams to shoot 25% from three against them with a shot quality expected percentage of 32%. And when you look at this team, right, they've played 18 conference games, 18 of their games and 18 of their most important games here down the stretch, opponents have shot 25% from three, which is just unbelievably not sustainable at all. And I think you look at this team and it's okay, if teams are actually shooting 32% from three against them in conference, so that I'm talking about conference only here, Justin. But yeah, if teams are only shooting or actually shooting 32% from three against them in conference, this is not a team that Ken Palm, Torvik, whatever it is, has ranked at 100. They probably have them ranked much closer to 180th, like we do, And so I think that that's one thing too, where it's okay, this is not really a team that we believe very strongly in. It's a team that we think is probably overrated. And then you look at these other teams that Justin mentioned that, are the legitimate top 4 seeds in this conference, and we have them much closer to that 100 rank A lot of them are like 120, but I agree. I think if you're going to take a team here, you take one of those better teams. I think you take like a Louisiana. I think you take Southern Miss, even JMU Marshall, like one of those teams. Like I don't really care who it is, but I think like that's where the value is. Like these teams are far and away the better teams. They are fortunate because each of the top 4 seeds get a bye, right? They only have to win 3 games. And I think that that's a huge advantage that does get discounted a lot in some of these futures too. If you had to pick a dark horse, I think it's got to be Texas State. Like I said,
Yep. Okay.
ShotQuality
If you have to take like one of the games on for the first round here, the teams have to play the extra.
Yep. And
it's a little
ShotQuality has them above South Alabama. They're only 3-point dogs against Old Dominion. They're never, like you said, they're never going to be huge underdogs in any of these games, even against the Marshalls, Louisianas. And like they've played a lot of these teams pretty tight, and ShotQuality has, positive record luck for them, things like that. And it's like you can get Texas State at 100-1 to win 4 games, right? And it's just like it's so different than you're only getting South Alabama 8.5-1 to win those 4 games, and it's like why are they being rated so differently than Texas State? I don't get it.
Yeah, I think honestly, this Texas State Georgia State game is a fascinating one because
it already happened. Texas State already won.
Really?
It was yesterday.
Wait, there was already
Old Dominion.
Oh my God! You know what? I didn't have time to preview every conference yesterday, and so my brain literally thought that didn't happen. Holy shit! Pardon my language. So wait, Texas State won that game?
Yeah.
And Arkansas State shot the lights out. I saw that. Right. Yeah. Arkansas State's looking really hot. And then because Georgia State had a massive record luck, but I mean that's kind of what happens though, right? Is that they haven't been able to kind of take advantage of putting themselves in good scenarios all season. Record luck kind of goes back and forth like that. So like seeing a 7 for Texas State means they're actually just a little bit off, while like I don't know, when you have the 19-20% difference for Georgia State, you wonder, okay, what maybe is happening in those games to create that type of number? Where is it like blowouts and they're just getting like a lot of threes in order to try to catch up? For a team like Georgia State, that can happen. I think this is a really interesting game here between Texas State and Old Dominion. That's going to be a fun one. Let's dive into a few of the matchups and maybe give out some of the bets from the model, and we can go that way. Let me just find out. We're going to go to the value finder on the page. I'm just live navigating here. Type in, of course, our conference of Sunbelt. Super easy. Sunbelt. And again, we're having some fun. Oh, I think they got fixed.
They've all flipped now.
Well, that's probably because our team is actually that fast. And they were probably looking at it because we knew we were having the problem. So that's what we do with ShotQuality. Anyway, so everything's updated, which is nice. There's only one play. And I hate when it does that. But it's only one play on the entire 4-game slate for Thursday's Sunbelt action. And that's going to be the Old Dominion Texas State under. We have a 7.9 point edge. So, just a point, 2-3 points above what we want for our threshold. How do you feel about that one? Let's dive in with the play that we have from the model.
Yeah, no, I think, like we said, this is a matchup we were already kind of interested in. It's a pretty low total. 131.5 is what it looks like it's sitting at right now. The first matchup between these teams, I think, is something that is going to also back up the fact that we said that we think Texas State is a good sleeper in this conference, and that's Texas State actually won the ShotQuality score in game 1. So there were 138 points scored. Old Dominion won by 2, 70-68. But ShotQuality had Texas State winning 69-63. So that would put the total at 132, which is basically exactly where this one opened up. I agree. I think everyone kind of knows that as we get in these conference tournaments, like we're seeing lower totals just a little bit, even a point or two, and I do think that just with the way that both these teams play, it's pretty conducive to unders, and that's why you see a total of only 131. And so, I like the play. And like I said, I did want to point out too, the only other matchup that these two teams have played all year, Old Dominion won, right? So Old Dominion's getting the boost in the box score analytics sites for that win, but ShotQuality actually had Texas State winning that one by 6. So pretty notable there as well.
Yeah. And then, there's been some interesting results here for Old Dominion. In their last like 6 games, they haven't had a game that, ShotQuality had them doing too much better. I mean, the Marshall win was a nice win at home. They actually were expected to win that by 13. But, the Southern Miss win at home was actually an 11-point expected loss. And then the Texas State game on the road, where they actually went to Texas State and won, they were expected to lose. And now this is being played in Pensacola. None of these teams are from Pensacola, Florida, mind you. But, this is a neutral site game. You got to think Texas State, remembers on February 11th when this Old Dominion team came into town and beat them by 2 points when they probably feel like they played a better game.
Yeah.
And they did. They did play a better game. So I'm a Texas State guy. I think this is definitely the way to go with it. I think if you have to make a play, that's kind of where I'm looking. But yeah, the under, it feels like this game's going to get tough defensively, at least in the second half when things start to tighten up and every bucket starts to come at a premium.
Yeah, I think too, notable, we have Texas State winning this game by 0.8 points. There will be a play that triggers on Texas State at some point here, and it's going to happen when the consensus line is +3.5, right? So I think getting a +3.5 on a neutral site here, like you said, Justin, that's what I'm most excited about is betting Texas State in this one. And I think, like I said, I'm going to take the 100 to 1 on Texas State to make a run in this tournament. I just think it's kind of a fun bet, but I do think they win this game outright, and I think that they're pretty live. Like we said, they've had some poor shot quality luck so far. And on the other side, if you go into Old Dominion's team page, Justin, I just want to point out a couple things.
Yeah, sure.
So this is why we're showing value on Texas State. For those of you that aren't familiar with shot quality and these schedules, a lot of yellow here. And if we look at since the Marshall loss, we have 6 games that Old Dominion has won that shot quality is graded as losses, which 6 of their 10, 11 games they've played in that span, which is pretty insane, and it's a lot of big wins, right? Like beating South Alabama, beating, I guess, Southern Mississippi, right at the bottom there. Those are really big wins that are really going to jump you in, like a Ken Pom, Torvik, something like that. And had they actually lost those games, I think this team is rated pretty similar to Texas State right now, and I think that's where you're seeing value. If you can get 3.5 points on a team that, just got this unjustified bump up because they had some luck on defense and offense against some of these teams.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good spot for sure.
I agree. I mean, the yellow on wins is what you want to look at all the yellow, right? You want to try to understand, a little bit about what they're able to manufacture. It's always interesting to look at the home versus the away, sort of see, all right, are they just always manufacturing a high shot quality win game percentage at home and unable to do so on the road? That's usually a telltale sign of a team, especially in this time of year, that is good to probably pick against. And, we're seeing some efficiency metrics here, which is pretty interesting. Everything pointing up towards more points for this Old Dominion team. I don't know. You can take that how you want. They're not exactly. I mean, 0.04 is pretty decently sized, but I would imagine that what we're looking at here, it's a lot in the post up, which is really interesting, especially in the conference play. So they're just not really able to back anyone down. And it's probably a lot of messy hook attempts and all these types of things that, could lead to shot quality, just crediting bad layups a little bit better than they're expected to be. Or bad post moves. I'm not 100%. This is a theory, right? But that's kind of how I see it. I do think that this game should be tightly contested at the end, and I do agree with the under. I know it's just kind of a scary time to play an under, but it's the right time to be playing unders because, defense is what kind of translates more so than offense. And especially this Old Dominion team, it's not like there's some massive discrepancy here. They're pretty good at defending the half-court offense. And, it's Texas State is going to fight them. This is going to be a tooth and nail battle here, in my opinion. We can look at the Texas State page really quickly. another pretty good team in terms of defense. And honestly, they're a pretty weak offense, 208th in offense and 157th in defense. So expect Texas State to try to rely on that defense. They're the 346th slowest team. So 346th fastest team. They're very slow tempo. I think that we're going to see a very deliberately planned game from them. I think they should get the win, and we'll go under the total.
Yeah. I
Let's
think
talk
too,
about
like one of the things is Texas State is giving up 0.03 more points on defense than they're expected to. So don't let the Old Dominion, part scare you. I think that there's obviously two factors that are kind of boiling into that. The other thing is, to me at least, when I see this, where it's like, okay, all the spreads we don't have a play on, all the totals we only have one play on, what it kind of means is these teams have obviously been playing, 18 games against each other. Like, if the discrepancies for the other games aren't very high, it probably means that ShotQuality has a pretty good idea of what's going on in this conference, right? Like, admittedly, there are some conferences where we're always showing like high values on team, right? And sometimes it's just like the way that the conference is being played, or the type of shots, or the type of talent, whatever it may be, like in the conference, like it just kind of, I don't know, like we just like a lot of unders in a conference, or a lot of overs in the conference, things like that. But here, to see only one play on either a total or a spread here gives me a lot more confidence, honestly. Like, as I'm going through and I'm making these plays, like if this is what I'm seeing, I'm like, okay, like ShotQuality bets model has a pretty good idea on this conference. Like, it's pretty close to market, but they're showing almost 8 points of value on the under in this one, right? And I think that that's a pretty good encouragement. And I don't know, gives me a little more faith when I push it in, for sure.
Yeah, I think so, and it'll be an interesting game to see how it results. I feel like you should feel a little bit more confident in these tournament unders than you do in the regular season ones. But let's talk a little bit about that big South Alabama Appalachian State matchup here. See it on the Valley Finder screen. It's going to be a 65 to a 63.8 projection. So ShotQuality does sort of have a slight edge for South Alabama. Do you see it being that tightly contested? Do you think one team's going to actually pull away a little bit? What's any types of takes? Let me pull up the team page comparison here, the matchup breakdown.
Yeah, I want to fade South Alabama just because, like I said, I think that they're being overpriced and people are much too high on this team, a team that has gotten a ton of 3-point luck. But I don't necessarily think that App State is the team to do it with. ShotQuality has them ranked 220th, which is quite a bit lower than most of the other analytics sites. Their offense is very poor, both in the half court and transition. It's just not the team to do it with, I don't think. So the model has a slight edge to App State here. It would take quite the move to actually trigger a play on App State. I think this is one you just sit out. Like I said, I really would not take App State futures, and I would very strongly encourage you not to do that. And I think this is one where I'm just waiting to take Southern Mississippi, in the next game. I think that that's your spot. You got to kind of pick your spots on these teams. And like we said, I think that South Alabama is overrated in the market because of this insane 3-point luck they've had. If you missed it earlier, opponents are only shooting 25% from three against them in conference play, and they're expected to be shooting 32%, which is a massive discrepancy. And I think, like I said, you just pick your spots here and you say, okay, I'm not really that interested in backing App State, a team that, we also think is overrated, and it's just like, okay, like let's wait until we can get them against Southern.
How do you feel about the under in this one? I feel like both of these teams are a little bit better at defending than they are at making shots. And maybe that's just because the numbers are from against playing some lesser offenses. So their defenses kind of look good in the expected metrics and the shots they allow their opponents to take. But, the off the dribble 3 percentage and some of the action that they see a lot for App State here, they do a decent job at protecting against some things. I mean, the catch and shoot 3, 34th best against it in the country, and see it at the 25th highest rate. So they're playing good defense on threes. And even like South Alabama is 35th in half court defense, or not 35th. They're 76th in half court defense. See it at a high rate. They're good at defending pick and roll ball screens, which they also see at a high rate. I could just see this being a game where the baskets are just really tough to actually get. So I kind of like the under.
I agree. And I think one of the important things to note in this conference is that there's a lot of really different pace teams, right? And I think that this is something where you play 18 conference games, right? And this is really going to determine where your defensive rating, offensive rating, and tempo like are set by the time we get to the conference tournament time. And you look at this conference and you have like the JMU, the Coastal Carolinas, you know, even like a Southern Mississippi. But there's like a lot of teams that are, you know, in the upper third or even higher in the country in terms of tempo. I mean, James Madison's like top 30, you know, Louisiana's pretty quick. And but when you get two teams here that are in the bottom third against each other, like it's a much different game, right? And so I think you just have to understand like how the markets are adjusting on these games, right? And as you play teams with the 34th tempo in the country, like your tempo is going to move up, even if that's not the way you want to play, you know? And so then I think you can find these spots where it's like, okay, these are two slower teams. Now we can like actually slow it up. And I think you are going to see some value on the under here. So I agree with that look. Like you said, they both play pretty slow, especially App State defense is so much better than their offense.
Right.
So yeah, I like that look for sure.
Yep, that'll be a good one. That'll be something I'll be on tomorrow. So let's look at Troy, Arkansas State. We saw Arkansas State. I mean, no other really way to say it. They kind of lit it up. They put up 86 points against Coastal Carolina yesterday on Tuesday. Now Thursday's game. I mean, first of all, Coastal Carolina expected to win by 6, 74-68 game by ShotQuality's measurement. They actually, of course, got beat down 86-69. So got a feel for Coastal Carolina, whether you bet them or you're a big fan. Like, that's just kind of how the game goes. If we click on this, I'm going to imagine it's going to say Arkansas expected to score, 18 fewer points on 3-pointers. So Coastal actually played a little better. I don't know what you make of a game like that now when a team like Arkansas State heads into the next round, Big Three. ShotQuality has Troy winning by 4.4 points, a 70.4-66 contest, I guess is the right word here. Anything you like here? We lean a little bit towards the over. And look, if Arkansas is going to shoot like that, I think you got to take the over.
Yeah, I think this is one. These teams played twice in the regular season, and Troy won both of them as probably expected. But Arkansas State, at least by ShotQuality score, I think both of the games we had them losing by 3. Yeah, the first one on the road, ShotQuality had them losing 64-67. The second one at home, ShotQuality had them losing 62-65. And even that one, they only lost the game by 5. But I think that, I don't know, you have a pretty good sample size of 2 games here where Arkansas State, based on the quality shot they allowed and the quality shot they took, played Troy tough, you know, and I think that it makes sense that we have it at about a 5-point game on a neutral site, you know, and it's just like 8 does seem too much here for me. Troy is a team that is very defensive centric. And I think too, like I said, pace wise, you know, you have to be careful in this conference where there's a lot of like pace wars. Troy is probably, I think they're right at about the halfway point in pace in the country, but I think you realize that, I don't know, it's going to be pretty dependent on who you're playing, you know, and like Arkansas State is very, very slow. And so I think that what you get here is, you know, 2 teams that have matched up pretty closely both times they've played this year, a Troy team that's probably going to be okay, you know, slowing down and playing a little more to Arkansas State's pace here. And so I think when you can get 8 points with, you know, a defensive favorite who's probably not going to run you out of the gym on offense, right? And a team underdog that plays pretty slow. I think that's like, we talk about the spots or like what makeup of a team you want kind of in these positions to like back an 8-point underdog. And I think that's pretty ideal, honestly.
I agree. This is it'll be a really interesting spot here. Good amount of points. It's going to be a fun matchup. And of course, winner of Arkansas State, Troy, gets to go play James Madison. So I don't know. I mean, look, 8 points on a neutral court for a conference tournament is just just feels like a lot off the bat. Troy expected to be a top 5 team in this conference, yes, and Arkansas State kind of down in a little bit lower at 226 versus 144. But 8, I don't know. It's a really interesting time of the season where motivation to cover versus motivation to win get very, very separated, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not really like trying to show the committee anything anymore. You're not trying to like pad your resume. You're not like trying to beat down a rival because, they're at your home court. Or, it's just don't lose.
Yeah. I think another thing here too is like, especially in these conference tournaments at these neutral sites where they're getting an extra day in between, right? So like here, Arkansas State is getting an extra day in between. I do think it starts to become a little more valuable having played in the facility, right? And so we talked about like this huge, crazy outlier of a game where Arkansas State won by 17. We're expected to lose the game. Like, I think the familiarity with this neutral site gym and like having already played here 2 days ago and shooting the lights out here 2 days ago, like does have a little bit of value, and I think that that's something where, I don't know, maybe you start to take that into account where it's like, okay, Troy's playing their first game in this gym, Arkansas State 2 days ago shot the absolute lights out in this gym, and I don't know how heavily you want to weigh that in, but I do think that I don't know, you can make an argument.
Well, what about another direction with that type of thought process where it's like, talk about a lot of times, it's like winning games matters. Like, Arkansas State, Texas State coming off of wins now get to go playing teams who are waiting for their first game on a facility they're not used to. So it's not just that they've played there. It's that they have, won there, in my opinion. I'm really interested to see how it goes for these teams, but I would not be shocked to see both Arkansas State and Texas State come out in the first half and at least keep it tight, So I would expect it to be tightly contested. If you're getting like 4 or 5 points on Arkansas State for the first half, that feels like a really nice play for me, just given what we're talking about here. I don't know.
I agree. I think too, I start to agree with the methodology of taking the underdogs you like in the first half in these conference tournaments too, just because there's no point in which you give up, right? And I think like we all have nightmares of stupid fouls down 8 with 10 seconds left when the game's already over, and I think like in conference tournaments, especially if you've ever bet on college basketball and conference tournaments before, like teams take a while to give up, right? And so I think like it's not a terrible idea either if you like an 8-point underdog and you don't want to have like that maddening experience at the end of the game, like just take the 4 or 5 in the first half. And if the first half doesn't go the way you like, maybe you are taking the second half if you still like the side. But I do think that's a good angle here too.
Yeah, I agree. I will definitely be looking, especially at Arkansas State, to come out and have a feel for the gym and maybe do a little bit of damage with it. I don't know. We'll see. There's definitely like no real, I guess, wrong answer with this type of stuff. You can definitely try things out, especially in conference tournament time. Like taking the underdog to me just always feels like it's just generally the safer way to play these types of things. The people want the favorites. And people who are watching there's still people like that. There's still fans out there. I would imagine that underdogs do pretty well against the spread across the conference tournaments over the next few weeks. I'd be willing to bet that underdogs do better than favorites.
I think that's true. You mentioned it earlier too, right? Like the favorites aren't playing to cover. Not that they're ever playing to cover, but I do think that you tend to see closer games, and if you're up 10 in the second half as a favorite, right? Like I think you start to play a little more careful than maybe you're playing like super loose, especially if you're at home up 10 in the second half, like a neutral site here up 10 second half. Like I think you start to try a little harder to secure the win than maybe like try to really pull away, and so I think that that's something too. I don't know. I'd like to see historical information on that as well. But I think unders and underdogs both get a little bit of an advantage here in these conference tournaments. And I think that it is really going to hurt people to start playing more unders because
It's
of what's
tough.
happened in the last 2 months. But I I really think that they're going to start to come around. And I think that like markets, books, whatever have over adjusted to kind of these high totals. And I think if you have completely taken unders out of, what you're playing in your bets, like you're probably going to get burnt here a little bit because I do think it always happens every year around conference tournaments like you are starting to see a little bit more of an edge towards the under, I believe.
Yep, I'm with you on that one. The last game of the day, though, Big Three, for this awesome Sun Belt round that we have. Honestly, I'm really excited about a lot of these games. You look at this board here, there are none separated by more than 4.5 points in ShotQuality's expectations. Right, that's less than 2 possessions. So we are going to be in for a treat. There's going to be some great finishes. I think, we've seen a lot of yellows on the schedules for these teams. So, anything can happen in this conference. It's really a little bit wide open. I talked about it for a couple of the conferences playing today, playing yesterday, playing tomorrow. Don't be shocked if ShotQuality has a couple things going the wrong way. It's how it's going to go. These conferences are going to be decided by players making shots they probably shouldn't and missing shots that they should be hitting. That's how basketball goes. That's how college basketball goes every year. If teams hit shots they were supposed to every time, it wouldn't really be like the pros a little bit more, right? Open threes just go down every time they get one, and it's not perfect, but it's just a lot more reliable. And you don't have that in college basketball. So expect the unexpected. Don't be afraid to take points. But last game of the day, Georgia Southern, Louisiana Monroe. This is an interesting one. These teams are kind of towards the bottom here. Louisiana Monroe is the second worst team in the conference for ShotQuality. So we're going to lean Georgia Southern on this. We have 4 points here. What's the line, Big Three?
Yeah, it's right around there, like right at -4, 4.5.
Oh, nice. Right in front of my face. Thank
The other thing, if you go back, Justin, will you go back to the conference
Yeah,
standings
sure.
here? Look at the difference here. So Georgia Southern is 208. Louisiana Monroe is down at the bottom, 227, right? So there's 3 teams between them, but all pretty tight. And I think you see right, a big amount of record luck for Louisiana Monroe. We have them at 11-7, not 8-20, but I don't know. I cannot figure out this Louisiana Monroe team. I'm not going to lie. I just have not been able to be on the right side of either of their games. I think I'm glad that ShotQuality doesn't like anything here. I do think the over would eventually be the right side if this continues to creep down. ShotQuality's got about 3.5 points on the over right now, and with the line currently at 132, I think if you could get a 130, I think that would be a good play on the over. But I'm happy to sit this one out. I have a lot of strong opinions, and I think you do too, on some of the other games, like we said, Texas State. And I don't know. I'd rather just sit this one out. It's not teams that I feel like I have as good of a read on.
I love it. And it has been a really just great conversation with you, Big Three. We are coming up on a full hour. We don't honestly hit the hour too often. We're going to wrap up the podcast episode here. If you're watching with us on YouTube, on Twitter, we really appreciate it listening in on probably Spotify, Apple. I don't know where you guys are, but we do appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for hanging out with us, talking Sunbelt and ASUN. Of course, the plays that we're going to have here are going to be from the Sunbelt. We're going to take the under on the Old Dominion Texas State game. We really like that position. I'm looking at an Arkansas State first half play. And then in the Atlantic Sun, we'll pull it up here on the ShotQuality Value Finder for one last time. We are going to be going with the over for the Liberty Eastern Kentucky game. And it looks like maybe the line has shifted a little bit for the Kennesaw Lipscomb game already, but we do lean over there as well, but definitely on the Liberty and Eastern Kentucky game. So thank you to everyone who tuned in. Catch us on ShotQualityBets.com. You can find both myself and Big 3 for 3 writing articles on the ShotQuality Wire page right here. You just go click on it, ShotQualityBets.com/blog if you want to input it on your phone. and you can see picks, best bets from a couple different writers, including the two of us. Some really great stuff, free picks all the time. So go check it out, learn a little bit more about ShotQuality, and we will see you tomorrow for another episode where we look ahead to the weekend, maybe pick a couple other conferences, and keep bringing you some cool stuff that expected metrics allow us to do. Big Three, thank you as always. Everyone at home, we will see you next time. This has been the ShotQuality Bets podcast tournament preview episode. Thank you.